Sometimes you just can't make this shit up. That's just how weird this is actually getting. Here's something I'm sure you missed if you've been following the Chad Daybell case out of the state of Idaho. Give you a little bit of background in case you don't know who Chad Daybell is. Chad Daybell is one half of the doomsday couple of Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell, who believed in the second coming of Christ in the 144,000. And they believed that they were the chosen ones to lead those to the other side of the veil. And as part of that, Chad and Lori had Lori's children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, murdered off, along with Chad's wife, Tammy, murdered, so they could transition to the other side of the veil. They believed that the children were zombies, possessed by evil spirits. I'm not sure why they needed to kill Tammy, other than Chad wanted to get himself, another piece of you-know-what. But anyways, Chad Daybell trial is ongoing in Idaho, where he is facing multiple first counts of first-degree murder in this case. Well, something that you've definitely missed from this case this past week and ongoing since the end of March to now is and finally wrapped up this past Thursday in this matter. A motion that was filed and put under seal immediately that caught the attention of not only myself and other AP news reporters, but it caught the attention of Nate Eaton with East Idaho News. Immediately as the motion was filed, it was sealed immediately, and we had no idea why this motion was filed at 11:42 at night and then sealed immediately. That motion didn't have a name that anyone who is connected to this case would recognize. If you've been following along this entire case, have you heard the attorney name of Terry Ratliff? Have you heard that name? No. No, you haven't, because that man is not lead counsel for the defense. He is not the prosecutor. He is not second chair with the prosecuting attorney's office. He's not even second chair or an attorney who will be called in for the death penalty phase of the case when it comes to that point. If Chad doesn't take a plea deal. He is not an attorney who is listed anywhere at all. So who is Terry Ratliff? Terry Ratliff is an attorney in the state of Idaho who, let's just say, has had a very unique set of clientele over the course of the last 5 years. And going back through some of his other cases, it looks like he has defended a bunch of conspiracy theory nuts, people who have made bogus workers' comp claims, and just about anybody who will walk into his office and throw a bunch of cash on the table. But Terry Ratliff is not Chad Daybell's attorney, nor one working for the prosecution. At 11:42 on March 29th, just before midnight, he filed an emergency motion in this case to stop the case right now. Stop it right now. We must have an emergency meeting. And he filed it. Judge Boyce was at home at that time when he got an urgent text message, first a call, which he didn't pick up because he was asleep, most likely, but he got an urgent text message from his court clerk that said, we need to talk. There's an emergency motion that has been filed in this case. The next day, contacting his court clerk to find out what's going on, Terry Ratliff, 2 days prior to the beginning of the selection of jury members in the Chad Daybell case, said, we need to halt this case. We need to deal with this motion. Who are you? What is this motion about? And why 11:42 p.m. Idaho time through the I-court system? The filing was entered into the I-court system hours before potential jurors were scheduled to arrive at the courthouse. Boyce and his staff and attorneys had spent the previous week going through juries' questionnaires in Boise. On Easter Sunday, my staff and attorneys had the opportunity to finally travel home to spend Easter with their families after a very long week. And we were all interrupted. Speaking of the court clerk, Judge Boyce said she contacted the court and said we had an emergency motion filed. The emergency has a motion to continue put the trial off until a later date. When Terry Ratliff showed up in court to answer the questions that Judge Boyce had for attorney-at-law Terry Ratliff, he showed up with his own legal counsel to figure out why he was being called into court in front of the judge. And the following is what Judge Boyce had to say to Terry Ratliff that day. Ratliff, I have some questions. While I appreciate the time that Mr. Bartlett, the attorney who is on there in record to defend Terry Ratliff, has put into this case, we don't have a party appearing in this case before me. You're not the defendant. You're not the state. You're not the prosecutor. You're not the defense attorney, Boyce said to Ratliff. You're an attorney with a license who filed something asking me to stop this trial when I don't think you have a legal standing to do so. I'm going to tell you, Mr. Ratliff, I was angry when I read your motion, and I think I'm angrier now. Boyce told Ratliff that he had some questions for him, not his attorney, but he had one that filed the motion on his official letterhead. Ratliff said he made an error in claiming to be Daybell's actual attorney. He now claimed, and when he was in court, that he was in error saying that he was Daybell's attorney. This is a template form, and I simply forgot to take it off, Ratliff said. As far as we know, Chad Daybell has never met attorney Terry Ratliff at any point in time because his actual attorney has been with him since before his actual arrest. In the body of the motion, I say I'm filing it without permission of the defendant or his counsel, end quote. Boyce asked who he was representing. Ratliff responded, should I have signed the motion as a citizen? You've got your name, you've got your Idaho State Bar number, your Ratliff Law Office attorney of the defendant. You're telling me you mistakenly filled something in as citizen and not an attorney? Boyce asked. Why are you doing that on Friday night at almost midnight? Ratliff responded that he needed to do something to slow the case down, in which Boyce replied, this trial is scheduled for how many years, and you want to slow it down and delay it before it ever starts? This is a last-minute motion. The judge then ruled Ratliff violated the Idaho Rules of Civil Procedure and sanctioned the attorney. He has now reported attorney Terry Ratliff to the State Bar of Idaho for possible sanctions as well. How many other wackadoodles are going to come out of the woodwork in this Chad Daybell case? Are we going to have an expert who is going to testify that Chad Daybell really has a porthole that he can go through to communicate directly with only Lori Vallow? Are we going to have religious zealots testify in this case to say that Chad has the right because they have anointed him, a seer or someone they know is the person who is supposed to protect those to cross over the veil? Are we going to go down that rabbit hole? It's going to be interesting. He already thinks that the children were zombies. He had a hit list that he had to write down in a spiral notebook of people who were dark spirits, who needed to be taken out. What else are we going to learn? Sometimes you just can't make this shit up.